We are Brightside Home Theater.
Hey, home theater nerds, welcome to the Brightside Home Theater Podcast. The home theater podcast that's all about the experiences, the sights, the sounds, the scenes. And the two guys sitting next to me here are all about the sights, the sounds, and the scenes. Nick from SVS, Vice President of Marketing, and Gary Yakubian from SVS also, the CEO. Did I say that right, Gary?
I feel too formal. I have my last name in here, and you guys are like so chill.
Nick's kind of private. I didn't know if he wanted his last name shouted out amongst the Ethernet.
He's got a lot of groupies.
How we doing, guys?
We're doing excellent. We're so happy to be here. It's been just a phenomenal year for SVS. And, I know we were able to enjoy your company on our own Audiophile happy hour. So, and Larry and I were able to do this once before, and we had so much fun that, I know Gary wanted to be back here as well. So just super excited to be a part of it.
Yeah, I met Gary at the Audiophile happy hour that I did. And I couldn't wait to get him here because, as I said to my listeners a little while ago, Gary, when I was announcing that you might be coming on, I'm like, I can't wait to get the CEO in, Mr. Business, and I want to crack you open.
Don't build them up too much. I'm gonna disappoint. I hate disappointing.
Oh no, you're not gonna disappoint. We're gonna have fun. I'm gonna crack you open, and we're gonna be laughing and having a good time.
You're gonna crack me open and see there's nothing inside.
No, that's me. It's just an echo chamber in there, just me talking to myself.
All kidding aside, I'm really happy to be on this because you keep it what this is supposed to be, which is a joyful, kind of avocation. I don't like the word hobby too much because it's a little bit, condescending, I guess. But you keep it fun, and I think that's awesome. And it was really great having you on our happy hour. So it's fun to be a part of your thing.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. Because I picked up a few listeners from that. I've got people emailing me, probably every other week or so. They'll be like, "Oh, the first time I saw you was on SVS Audiophile Happy Hour," and I'm like, "Really? Cool. All right." So, thank you guys for bringing me on. That was, for me, getting asked by you guys is when Nick texted me, and I was like, "Oh my God. All right, cool." I couldn't, it's like, "I'm sorry, it's short notice." I was like, I would have moved the world. Like, I get to do it. All right, cool.
It's funny because, we work hard, beyond just making phenomenal audio products to cultivate a community around, this passion for home theater and music and hi-fi. And, we recognize when people kind of get that. And so when they do, we have our sort of soapbox that we can use with the Audiophile happy hour, and, some of the blogs and other things that we do. But I so value the energy and the excitement that you bring to this because of exactly that. I think, the whole bright side mantra of not having it be so judgmental or not having it be like, there's a right or wrong way to do things, but more a matter of, taking it to the extreme based on what your passion is, what your budget is, what you enjoy the most, and no judgment involved. And I think, I saw that from the first episode of yours that I listened to, and then with the home theater tours that you do, it was like, this guy's just getting that sort of cultivation of community that we work so hard to do. So, I just thank you for that. And, again, it's a pleasure to be here.
And that's why
it's huge because I think so much of the audio space is predicated on the belief that most people don't care about great sound. And what you do and what we try to do as well is bring more people, the joy, the fun of enjoying great sound.
Yeah. Yeah. And Nick, thank you very much for that. That's why you're the Vice President of Marketing, my friend. I was like, I'm going to edit and clip that and use it as a commercial. That was awesome, Nick. Thank you very, very much. Oh, all right. Yeah, so we do like to keep things I do like to keep everything is positive and bright and having a good time. And when I reached out to you guys, I reached out to Nick over the summer. I was thinking of doing a charity thing, and Nick stepped up right away. He was like, "Absolutely, we want to get involved." And you guys have supported me just in the podcast itself in developing this. And obviously, like I said a minute ago, you've actually brought in listeners too. But your charity is your support in my charity events, and not events, but just me doing this was huge. And for me to get that, I told my parents about it. I was like, SVS is getting on board. They're a huge company. And my dad watched our video. And I had to tell him, I'm like, that's Nick. He goes, who were those guys that I was talking to? And he thought they were just donkeys like me. And I was like, no, that's Nick. He's the vice president of marketing. And he goes, who was the guy next to me in the bottom corner? And I was like, that's Gary. He's the CEO of the whole company. He goes, really? I'm like, yeah. I was like, these are real people, Dad, not donkeys like me just sitting in their basement. These are professional people in the industry. So that impressed him. And you doing what you do for charity and stuff like that, I couldn't wait to get on board. And we've gone back and forth over the months on which one we were going to do. And you pinged this one a few months ago, and because it's near and dear to Gary. And you guys wanted to do this. So Gary, why don't you talk about this, the Washington Performing Arts?
Well, yeah, thanks for that. And by the way, kudos for doing it this way, for bringing a charitable element to it, because this is, I think the need for giving has probably never been more acute. Lots of these nonprofits and charities are suffering because, in a difficult economy, which I think we've been in this year, giving it doesn't dry up, but it definitely goes down. So it's great that you're shining a light on different charities with your podcast. I think it's awesome. Washington Performing Arts, a lot of people know them as the organization, nonprofit charity that puts on most of the classical music in Washington at the Kennedy Center, at Strathmore Hall, which is in Rockville, Maryland, and other venues around the DC area. And that's definitely true. But I think what really resonated with Nick I'm on the board. I'm vice chair. I'm a music nut. I'll go to metal, I'll go to jazz, but I'll also go to classical. And that's one reason why I connected with them. But when you drill deeper into it, they're also responsible for loads of free concerts in the DC area via Mars Arts, which is like Mars Candy Bars. A lot of putting on of just events for anyone who lives in the DC area. And then probably the thing that resonated the most with Nick is they're providing tons of music education in the DC public schools. DC public schools, if you know anything about DC, a lot of the districts are resource challenged. They don't have the ability to provide music education, access to musical instruments, things like that. And Washington Performing Arts does loads of that as part of what they do. And that definitely resonated with Nick. I mean, what a huge thing to get people who don't have access to normal resources, access to music education so they can, kind of learn more about the arts. So it's definitely a passion of mine. I'm on their board. And this year I'm vice chair. And I love being a part of it. And I'm so happy that you're letting us shine a light on it today.
Oh, I was excited to do this with you. I think doing these different charities, it's like that. My idea of this is, we're in like the fun sandbox here, right? And it's not a cheap, as you said, I know you don't like hobby, but it's not a cheap endeavor to get into home theater or anything.
Right.
And if you're listening to this podcast, we're all pretty lucky people, right? To have what we have, to have the extras these are all extra things, and to give back to people that that probably wouldn't even be close to this. And we'll do other charities as well that'll reach out like this. But I just think I always think of stuff like that when we get into, we're talking, when you really get into this, it's a very expensive hobby. There's a lot. And so there should be some extra money out there for people. And my listeners, my numbers went way up once I said I'm starting to do a charity, and they're not huge. But we're giving 50%, but the numbers are growing every month. So we'll see where we go. And this month is the highest month I've ever had. I told Nick yesterday when we were talking. I started out as like, okay, we're going to do 50%. And then But then I was like, I was bringing in $56 a month from my listeners. And then when I announced this, doing the charity thing, people started doubling their Patreon support. People started sending money in. So every dollar that comes into the podcast every month gets 50%. But I didn't feel like putting out just like $25. So I capped it. I'm like, it's a minimum of 100. And this is the second month we actually topped over $200 from our donors, and it's still going because as we're recording this, the year isn't over, and the listeners I'm at like $215 right now, so I'll be giving $107 to Washington Performing Arts, which is this is the second time we've gone over $200 to actually give a true 50% from my podcast.
Love that. That is so awesome. But you're also shining a light on the work they do, which is really great. And we're going to give, are we allowed to say this, Nick?
Yeah.
We're going to give from SVS $1,000 to them on behalf of us, but really in honor of this podcast, in honor of Brightside Home Theater. So
thank you.
We love it.
Just to riff a bit off what you were saying, DJ, and I know we like to consider what we do. We sell aspirational products. They're not something that you need in your life to survive, but they certainly make the experiences that you create for yourself on a daily basis that much more enjoyable, that much more exciting. And I think a lot of what the WPA is doing is creating aspiration with underserved youth or other people in communities that may not have access to these kind of performances or even the education that you need to really get into music on a level where you could make a career out of it or build, a hobby, as far as, really taking it to the next level. And I think that's why they resonate so much with us is, just because of that fact that it's sort of an adjacency to us. They're not dealing with hardware and equipment, but they're cultivating, again, that sort of early wave of folks who can really appreciate music on a deeper level, understand how to make music, understand how to, work with musical instruments and various artists. And then they bring in all sorts of different genres. I think Gary mentioned jazz, classical. They also do a lot with gospel. They do a lot, with music from Latin America and Asia. And so, it gives people sort of this melting pot of music that you can really sort of establish new interests, but also educate yourself and take it to, a level where it really, means something in their life down the road where, maybe it becomes a career or something like that. So I think that's why our support for them has been so strong. And they've actually had a couple of their artists join our happy hour as well, promoting various performances or different nonprofit endeavors that they're working on. So we just love to build off of it. And, I can't thank your listeners enough and you for taking this approach, because it is the kind of thing that's going to snowball. You're going to see where it is now. It's going to be exponentially bigger as you keep going forward.
Yeah, I hope so. But yeah, getting back to performing arts, or any of the arts. I just had this conversation over the holidays with a family friend, and it was like the conversation started with, we don't really need to educate to have art. Kids shouldn't be forced into like music at the early ages. It's like, let them choose it if they want. And what I was saying is, I'm like, I went the opposite approach. I'm like, I think everybody should be forced to experience something in the early ages. And it's because you never know what you like until you experience it. And some kids will take to it, and great. If they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. But it's stuff like that. It's the exposure to like what Washington Performing Arts is doing. It's like they're bringing it to people that might not ever have gotten it in the first place. And then who knows where it goes from there. Then it's up to them, right? But at least they're getting it out there. And I think art is one of those things, whether it's performing arts, fine arts, musical, acting, all of that different stuff. It's like people lose the idea that we need it. And I think we need that more than we need a lot of other things in life, because the art is what brings us, it brings us entertainment, but believe it or not, it brings us technology. It's brought us all sorts of things, because the creative mind it's an amazing thing. And who knows where ideas come from.
Totally agree with you. And a couple of things on that to riff on that. first of all, for the kids, they don't necessarily ram a type of music down their throat. They just give them access to music education and musical instruments. But also, one of the things I've learned, this is something I've learned as being a part of this organization. People get exposed to something earlier in life, and then they may be resistant to it or not interested, but then they circle back to it later on, and they're interested, and they have some level of a fundamental understanding of it, so that they have an entry point to it. So even if they're not necessarily reacting to it when they're young in school, they might come back to it later in life. And then the other thing, to your point, I think one of the first reasons I started giving to Washington Performing Arts is because in these times where there's so much divisiveness and disagreement, there is a unifying power to the arts in general. And look, now we can circle it back to Brightside Home Theater, because, what walk of life person went to see, for example, Top Gun this year, and now is getting the Blu-ray or watching it in streaming? I would say every type of person. So it's something that every person from every walk of life, from every political belief, whatever, probably would have watched Top Gun and loved it, and I think that's probably going to be true of this new Avatar. From what I'm hearing, they've already passed $1 billion, and it's not even available on Blu-ray yet. This is the type of thing that brings people together, and maybe we need more of that right now.
Yeah. Art definitely, I think, brings people together. It can inspire conversations that have nothing to do, debates. Two people look at a piece of art and they interpret things differently, or hear something, especially like in a symphony. You can hear, you can interpret it as like different things, different emotions strike you, and then you have a conversation about it. And who knows who these people are? It's the things that have been inspired because of art it's endless. So it's so much fun to do, and I'm just this is such a great one. Nick, thank you for bringing this to us. I'm really excited about this. It's not, honestly, and the other thing is, it's not something I would have thought of myself, but it's, again, you guys bringing it up, I'm looking at it going, yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's adjacent to what we do, and I think that's what helped it really resonate with us. And then, Gary lives local to a lot of where the performances are. So, he's able to be there in person and support them. And, we just love everything that they stand for. And their team, I think a lot of their team is just wonderful. I'll just leave it at that. Like the way that they connect us with some of the inner city schools, and we're trying now to actually get some of our Prime Wireless Pro gear out to some of the schools there, so they'll have a better quality playback system, and they're really facilitating all of that. And so if we can actually make that hardware connection with SVS to some of this more ethereal things that are happening with some of the programming that they're doing, then I think it really becomes full circle at that point. So, I think the sky's the limit as far as our relationship with them can go. And they do things on a national scale as well. So, we really just are excited year after year. We've sort of increased our benefit, or sort of the donations that we've done and the program that we've had with them. And so I'm really looking forward to kind of getting boots on the ground and seeing how maybe some SVS products can really move the needle and help some underprivileged students enjoy the benefits of great sound and understand the art that much better.
Nice. Yeah. Let's get this going. I liked what Gary said about how you're exposed to something when you're younger, and that's what Washington Performing Arts have done here. And then you circle back to it, and that's me. You guys can't see the graphics right here, but I've got your titles, and my title here is DJ Briggs Newbie Audiophile, because for Christmas, I gave my wife a turntable. We haven't had a turntable in this house ever. And I say this house going back to our apartment. We all grew up with them. My wife and I are both 52 years old. We had turntables, little ones in our bedrooms, and we played our music on them. So for Christmas, I got her a music hall MFF or MMF 1.5. I forget the title of it exactly. And I connected it to your SVS Sound Pro. So that came because I have Ara's speakers that Ara built for me. Nick, you were on Ara's show a couple weeks ago.
Gary was too.
Oh, you were on there too,
Yep.
Gary? Oh, awesome.
Yes.
I forgot you were
How
on
could you
there.
forget about me, DJ?
I know. I'm like, I listen to them every week. I listen to you guys all the time. They mix up. I didn't know if Larry was on there, but sorry about that. But yeah, so he built me these awesome set of speakers. And because of that, I needed to get something to play them with because I had nothing to play. All my gear is in my theater. So I was thinking of the Soundbase Pro, but I wanted to put it out to people and see and more people told me Soundbase Pro. Brent Butterworth, who was on my podcast recently, he said the same thing. He goes, I had already gotten it, but he's like, that's a great product. And listening to his podcast, he was saying, get it. So I did. And then I had connected that. I connected my TV through it. I had a little issue. We'll talk about that in a second, but you guys solved it perfectly. But then the turntable idea came and for Christmas, and I started to told my kids about it. We're up to like 30 LPs now in the house. And the thing's running awesome, and I'm having so much fun with it and getting into that quote audiophile life. It's been a long time. Gary, what's the difference in a cartridge?
Yeah.
I'm like, I thought you plugged these things in and you just put the needle down and it played, right? But everybody's telling me cartridges, this and that. When I bought this thing, I was like, I read some reviews and they're like, oh, you got to be careful setting it up and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, I actually got scared, but I still went through with it, set it up. It runs fine, I think. You'd probably come over, Gary, and be like, no, this is horrible. It sounds like chipmunks. No, it sounds great, but now that I'm listening and I'm trying to learn what to listen for, what are the differences in cartridges? What does all that mean?
So, first of all, you got differences in the level of turntable. I mean, there are cartridges out there, and I'm sure you know this, that cost more than most people's entire setup. A lot more. And so, there's a level that you may or may not want to go to. And it also depends on all the ancillary gear, including the turntable, the tone arm, and the phono preamp that you're using, and the rest of the gear, the speakers. But I mean, generally speaking, there are two basic categories of cartridge. There's moving magnet and moving coil. And moving coil cartridges are often the ones that you see at the really stratospheric high prices. And in my record player, I have a low output moving coil, which means it needs a special phono preamp that deals with that. In the end of the day, I would say don't obsess over it too much, because if you start getting sucked into this, then at that point you'll drill into the differences and start upgrading different parts of it. The record player you got is a good one and musical, and I don't think over the top expensive. It's relatively within reach of a normal person, and enjoy it. And a lot of the record players that are in that price range and a little higher, the cartridge comes pre-installed. It's got some screws to allow it to not get out of adjustment during shipping. You take the screws out when you get it. And maybe yours didn't have that, but that's
I was like, typical. I didn't take any screws out.
It would be pretty normal for that. And then, you enjoy it. And then, at a certain level, there's a level of expertise in installing a cartridge and measuring and all that stuff that is a dying talent. It's like there's not that many people. I think there's literally now in my area, in the DC area, one person that I know of that's qualified to set up my record player. One, I have to drive near Baltimore to get, and he's kind of a little wild. I don't want to say, not the most normal person.
Are any of us, Gary? Come on.
Okay, yeah, I shouldn't judge, right? But at a certain level, it requires a lot of expertise to get all that fidelity out of the cartridge. And DJ, what to listen for? That's easy. Listen for do the hairs not, like in anything you do, and this, are the hairs on the back of your neck standing on end when you listen? Is it reminding you of the first time you heard that music and you loved it? Is those kind of things? Are you having that emotional connection? If it's doing that, then probably you got it set up right, and enjoy it.
Yeah, well, I am getting all that, but a lot of that's the nostalgia, right? But then it kind of wears off because,
right,
in this hobby, it's like, sorry, I don't know what else to call it, but
no, I'm not that worried about
he's
it.
like, I don't like to call it a hobby. Like, great.
I like people to take it a little seriously, I guess that's all.
But there's nothing wrong with taking your hobby serious, right? Because that's our break. We
Totally.
take our everyday life serious. It's like work hard, play hard. So just because it's called playing, it doesn't mean you're not working at it and you're not having a good time, right?
Not taking it seriously. I agree.
Right. So what I noticed in home theater and talking to other people that I've had on my podcast, listeners, teaching me about I'm not an audiophile, but then I'll have somebody on and it's like we start talking and it's like I can hear things. And when you listen to stuff over and over, you develop an ear for, all right, I know this needs to sound a little bit, this properly tuned should sound a little brighter in this area. And then the bass should be doing this. So I get that part. But like you said, right now, my hairs are standing up on my neck left and right because every album I put on, it's like we're going from Def Leppard to, my wife, Bryan Adams, all the stuff from when we were kids that you're like, but it never sounded this good. It was like, we had the little plastic turntable with in our bedrooms with maybe a speaker. It might've been on a single speaker. And then we thought that was great because we just turned it up loud until the speaker crackled,
I think it's so funny you talk about nostalgia. I think one thing that makes me think about is I used to have one of those little Fisher-Price turntables, and then I had this little plastic stethoscope that came with a doctor's set.
Yeah.
And I used to put that on the speaker to be like, I'm listening to headphones now. I'm spinning my little Mary Had a Little Lamb record on that. But then, to bring it more full circle, there's just this last Christmas, actually, we got my parents, the original Prime Wireless powered speakers. And then my brother and sister kicked in with an Audio-Technica turntable because they've had vinyl collecting dust in their attic probably for about 40, 50 years now. And, when we're able to piece that all together, and then, at the same time, maybe this was coincidence, maybe not, marijuana became legal in the US. Now they could really get this full nostalgia, going again. And so, they're busting out their old George Carlin records and, they got all sorts of crazy stuff that I didn't even, Jim Croce and things I would go over there. And so now they have a date night every Saturday night where, they either make martinis or something else. And they play an entire record all the way through. And that's, a cheap date night for them. So, you talk about nostalgia. It's a way to really reconnect with your music. And you have all these great albums. And, I buy in somewhat to that notion that it's a warmer, more engaging sound than maybe the digital files. So I think some of that might be more in the ears of the beholder, but there's definitely a difference to it. It's a little bit, it's hard to encapsulate unless you've actually heard one of your old records and one of those original pressings. But I've yet to jump on the vinyl bandwagon. But the opportunities I get to listen over at my folks' house are pretty fun and filled with excitement.
Well, let me put it in a different light too, though. You're all using it as sort of like, hey, we can be all old timey and nostalgic, but here's a challenge I would issue anyone who has a record player who hasn't done this. Think of something that you've only known in the digital world, like you've only known it by streaming, for example, or you had a CD and that's the only way you've known that music. And find it on vinyl and see what the difference is. I'll give you an example of one that just blows my mind. You guys remember the Radiohead album where they said, pay what you want, and then you could just stream it. It's called In Rainbows. It's actually a really good album. Some people think it's their best or among their best. And I like Radiohead. So I bought I don't know what you call it, the VIP version or whatever, the extreme version of it. And it came with vinyl, and I never bothered to listen to the vinyl. I listened to the CDs, and I and it had digital files. I could stick them on my phone. When I refurbed my turntable and bought a new cartridge, a low output moving coil cartridge, DJ, the Koetsu cartridge.
Get that name dropping.
I'm name dropping. I got that album out and played it, and I had only listened to it in digital forms. And I was really amazed at, I'm not imagining it. It sounded better on my system than the CD does. And just more real, more palpable, like I was in the room with the musicians. And it's a good experience. So I challenge everyone, give it a try. Something that you only know digitally, give it a try in vinyl.
We did that for, I can't remember what the album is that I bought for my wife, but it's something that we only know digitally because it's only been out since then, right? But there was another one I think my daughter or my son picked out. It's Five Finger Death Punch and my wife loves that type of music. So we haven't listened to it yet, but now that you're saying that, Gary, that sounds fantastic because it's like, there's a lot of stuff I like. Oh, you know what we did get? We got the one, my kids bought me one too, Foo Fighters. I've never heard them on an LP because they've only been out digitally for me ever since. I haven't listened to a record since probably the 80s, right? And it's like, so now that you say that, I can't wait. And I love Foo Fighters. You see me at a Foo Fighters concert, you wouldn't even know who I was. I'm a screaming maniac. But that sounds awesome. And I the word I wanted to say for you there was like, I feel like there's just, whether it's just like from there's more texture. I just feel like there's more of a texture that's a good way to the music.
Yeah. More texture. The notes feel more kind, and this is a weird way to put it, but feel kind of rounded, like more rounded off. And maybe bigger in the sound stage, like they're just occupying more space. And sometimes it's worse for sure. Sometimes you're like, oh, I think I remember this sounding better digitally if you go back and forth. And also younger generation, like my sons, they're like, what's all that noise? They can't handle the crackling and the popping because they've never heard it ever. For somebody my age, it's not that weird. For some people, it is.
Yeah, I want to talk about that in a second because my son's 25 and he has no idea. He's not opposed to it, but we're having great conversations about the differences between this and digital. But just what you were saying there, I don't know why it just popped in my head, but I've learned this in podcasting and see if it translates. And maybe this is why people like, and you don't know why, like you said, you don't know why you like records, but in podcasting, there's a trick people do with their audio, and it's like, we're having a conversation. I don't do this trick. I don't really care, but in digital, there's nothing. So when you and I, if there's a gap in our conversation, there's dead air, right? There is absolutely nothing there. It's crystally clear silence, right? But on a record, you don't have that. But there's a trick in podcasting to make our audio sound more natural is you put a white noise behind us. So then when this is playing, you'd hear a little bit of and you can, it's barely audible, but it makes the entire conversation cohesive. It hides edits and stuff like that, but that little bit of background noise tricks the brain into thinking that everything's linked perfectly. Do you think that maybe that could be what it is, and the appeal to a record, to an LP, that makes you just like, you don't know why I like it, but it just sounds so much better, and it's actually introducing noise that shouldn't be there?
Well, and it's covering up maybe some imprecisions in what's going on there. With white noise makes sense to me that that would do that. It would cover up imprecise moments that are very quiet, and the white noise just covers it up. With records, well, there's a term we use in audio when a speaker is almost too revealing. We call it ruthlessly revealing. And we want our speakers to be super accurate, but we don't want them to be accurate to the point that they're blaring in your face and blaring detail to a point that you don't feel emotionally connected to what you're hearing. So I think records do a good job in kind of shielding you from details in the recording that you really don't want to hear. And by the way, on the older stuff you're talking about, the producer knew that the person was only going to be able to hear it by either a record or, believe it or not, a cassette. I mean, there were things that you used to be able to buy cassettes in those days of Def Leppard and things like that.
Yeah.
You used to be able to buy it on a cassette. So the producer knew that and would optimize the recording to work well with a record, just the way that producers today optimize things for headphones, because so many people are just using headphones to listen to music.
Yeah. And the other part of a record, and this is the conversation I had with my son, is we put, what was it? Def Leppard Pyromania on the other day. It came in late. We put that on. We listened to both sides of it. And my son was in and out of the room and he's like, "It's over?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "It's only like 40 minutes. You get 5 songs aside. They only fit, you know." And he's like, "Oh, too bad you can't go to, you can't just jump right to a song." I'm like, "You can." And I had to go over. He's 25 years old. I had to go over, take the the record off, show him how you can see where the tracks begin. I go, you just drop the needle right here and you're off on that track. You just have to read where it is, count that many in. He's like, "Oh, I never knew that." But the other part is that I was explaining to him is records used to tell a story. I'm a huge Springsteen fan. Like Born to Run is a story from beginning to end. Nobody listens to albums anymore cohesively. Everybody listens to music now in bits. They'll listen to this song digitally, then they'll jump to this song. Albums were meant to be listened to like you start at the beginning and you go right through to the end. And I think that's a lost piece of the art.
Some of the more ambitious ones are still thinking of it that way. I totally agree with that. Like these are two very disparate ones. The new Taylor Swift one and the new Kendrick Lamar that both came out this year. Both, I really think that the artist intended you to start with song 1 and go to the end, and especially the Kendrick Lamar. I don't know if you guys like rap, but that's about as good as hip hop music gets, in my opinion. And he definitely tells a story from the beginning to the end of it. And to a little bit lesser extent, I think Taylor Swift does a really good job on that Midnights with that.
It's funny you mentioned Taylor Swift. All the podcasts I listen to, the guys that I've had on showcasing their home theaters, they'll be Audiophiles. I've done a few with Ara, and they keep, including Ara, they keep mentioning Taylor Swift. And what a great
I think she's
artist
brilliant.
she is. Yeah. And I've never really gotten into her, but I think I'm about to.
Well, the last few albums that she did, the 2 she did during the pandemic, and then this one that just came out a few weeks ago, are just absolutely brilliant. And I don't think any age group would be like, "Oh, that's, bubblegum, that's for younger people." It's just not. It's just really good music. She's a great songwriter, and she works with very professional producers to create a good product. So I certainly enjoy it.
Nice. I think I'm going to give her a shot. Now, Nick, you're sitting there, you don't have a turntable yet. You're not getting into vinyl. You said you might be getting the itch. What kind of music do you listen to? If you get the itch.
Yeah, I mean, I'm big on discovery in terms of like, we have a close partnership with Qobuz. They're a music streaming service, and they have this great discovery sort of app within their service that just allows you to plays music based on what your interests are. And I know a lot of the other streaming platforms have that as well. So, I mentioned this on our last happy hour. I've been on a little bit of a punk kick recently, and I discovered this new band called Drug Church, which I found to be good. It kind of got me back in touch with my teen angst, and there were some stressful moments over the holidays, which this helped me sort of, release that over a glass of eggnog and have some fun there. But I think, Kendrick Lamar certainly been at the top of my playlist. I listen to a lot of older grunge music as well. I'm fortunate enough that my 18-year-old son has really adopted a lot of the music that I used to listen to. So we can listen to Nirvana and we can listen to Stone Temple Pilots, and he likes, Green Day and things like that, where, it's not There's songs that I've heard a million times, but for him to be able to hear some of the deeper cuts from the albums, from playing the entire album through, I think that's been rewarding for me, because again, it's like stuff that takes me back to the day, and going through a similar time in my life, and now I can share it with him. So all that's been good as well. And then I think through the WPA, I mean, we've talked to some artists that got me into listening to gospel for a little bit, or country music, or even like Latin jazz. So I'm sort of, I jump all over the place. I have sort of my set stuff I listened to when I was younger, and then I'll go and listen to a full album of something brand new, and I might not ever listen to it again. But I feel like it's sort of about the exposure, and just giving my speakers something new to test with, and if I like something, then I'll bookmark it. But there's no really methodology, because I always hated country music, and then just this summer, I started listening to like nothing but like old school, like Leonard Cohen, and then Willie Nelson, and then some of the other country artists from the classic era. And so it's sort of whatever is interesting me in the moment.
Nice. That's cool. I've been exploring the app side of the SVS Soundbase Pro. I haven't really gotten too much into it, because I've been doing everything through my Apple TV, and I run, like I said, I used to have a Sonos Beam as my center channel, and I took that out. I put this in, and we love it. We had a slight issue. Do you want to talk about that right now?
Yeah, bring it up. I mean, HDMI
it was my
a
bad.
Sexy topic.
It was my bad, and that's why I'm like, you guys were great about it. So what happened is I installed this, and I connected using the HDMI port on the back of the Soundbase, and all I did is I took out the beam, the Sonos Beam, took the HDMI out of that and put it into the Soundbase. And what was happening for a little while is it was just cutting out every 30 minutes, the Soundbase. We'd lose audio, so that we hit the volume and it'd come back on. And then by the time I got some time to figure it out, I was like, I didn't have a lot of time. So I was like, I was waiting. I was going to call you, Nick, and have us work it out. And I'm like, wait a minute, why don't I call SVS directly? Called the helpline, and I got Ryan. And apparently you guys are breeding them over there. Ryan, because we thought we figured it out. He helped me go through my television. He actually asked for the serial number or whatever. He looked up the manual, and he told me to shut off your, the HDMI CEC. So I did that. Well, and a half hour later, it still came back on. I call back, and Ryan had said, he goes, if it happens again, call right back. Okay. So I called back 30 minutes later, and he says, hi, I'm Ryan. I go, are you Ryan? And he goes, no, I'm Ryan too. He knew right away what I was saying, because he didn't sound like the first Ryan. I was like, all right. So he helped me through it. And what he goes, well, let's look at this. And I ended up going in the back, and he goes, are you connected to the correct HDMI output, the ARC one? And I was like, so I go to the back of the TV, and I look, and I discover that it was a digital optical to HDMI output is what I'd been using the whole time. So then I was like, oh, here we go. Let me connect it through the ARC. So I connected through the ARC input, and I'm like, here we go. And I was like, I got to figure it out. So we hang up. Everything's good. I think I got no sound. So I couldn't figure, that's what it was. We connect. I couldn't get any sound. And Ryan 2 is like, I don't know what it is. Let me talk it out. Let me talk to Ryan 1. I'll call you back. So while I'm waiting to hear him call back, I'm starting to, troubleshoot this. I look in the back, donkey error over here. It's dark behind the TV. That's the only excuse I have. My HDMI port that has ARC is HDMI 4. I had plugged it into HDMI 3. That's why I had no sound. So I call right back, and I'm like, I'm so sorry. I got Ryan 1 this time, with Ryan 2 sitting in the background, because they were sitting there trying to hash out my problem to give me. And I go, I figured it out, guys. It's me. User error. Dumb over here. I got it to the right port. My wife and I, ever since then, we walk in the living room, and we're like, hey, the sound is still on, thinking it's fancy. I mean, what I thought was awesome about this, and I had this issue long time ago, separate issue with my subwoofer, and why I wanted to get in touch with this company in the first place, is this is how fantastic you guys were. There wasn't a single problem with your product. You guys worked through my television and me. It's like, and we were laughing about it, and it was great. It was, I mean, Ryan 1, Ryan 2, they were fantastic, and they didn't even make me feel like, now I'm Mr. Brightside. I've helped a lot of people, but in my head, which they probably were doing too, no doubt. And I don't blame them, like rolling their eyes like, oh, this idiot. But they didn't portray that at all. It was fantastic. And
we don't roll our eyes. There's so many, it's a confusing thing to connect this stuff. And, HDMI is a new dimension because, or a different dimension because each TV brand implements HDMI a little bit differently. Obviously, you need to have it plugged into the right hole. You do need to do that. But even beyond that, there's always settings in the background that sometimes prevent the TV from being returned. They defeat some of the potential settings that could make the sound better, just to have sound of any kind, so you won't return the TV. And so sometimes we just have to work with people, and each brand is a little bit different. Luckily, there aren't that many TV brands, so these guys are they're students of it, and they do enjoy troubleshooting. They don't roll their eyes because it's always something new, and I think it keeps their day fresh.
That's a great way of putting it, Gary. Like, hey, I got this guy on. He's so stupid. This is new. We're keeping it fresh.
Add him to the dartboard. No, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, and I think, with our team specifically, I think every brand is like, oh yeah, we have great customer service. Yeah, we'll take care of you. But, with our approach, it's really a matter of, getting to the root of the issue. It's not a matter of getting the person off the phone and figuring out, whether it's a setting in an AV receiver or on the TV or whatever. Like, we will take the time to make sure you get exactly the help that you need. And, I think it's funny that you happen to talk to both Ryans. But, we've got a team who will do video consultations. They'll do sort of a two-way video, so you can show them the menu settings, show them where you might want to place your speakers, give you that sort of eyes in the room view that I think can be so beneficial when optimizing your home theater setup.
When your own eyes aren't working.
When maybe it's a little dark behind the TV and you need some help with that flashlight, we'll take you there. So that's part of it. I thought it was great when you were talking, that story you were saying about your dad and seeing us on the podcast. One thing that we're big about is accessibility, and Gary's too humble to admit it, but we have what's called our customer bill of rights, and there's a direct line to Gary there. Like, people email him all the time and they say, this is what you're doing great. This is what I think you can do better. And those become a lot of times an impetus for us to make certain changes or update processes within our company, because we take that stuff incredibly seriously. We try to really be owner facing, and not just owner facing, but folks who are just getting into this hobby. We don't want people to feel intimidated or like they're on their own making these decisions. And I think one of the best reviews that we've ever gotten from an owner was on our site, and was like, you know what? I just called up and I spent half an hour talking about my whole system, and it just felt like I was talking to a friend who's into this hobby with me, and they were sort of there along for the journey. And I hung up and I'm like, I kind of want to call that person back every single week and just sort of shoot the, break bread with them, because like it was such a fun conversation and I got so much out of it. And that's, one reason that, we love doing the live streams. We love doing stuff like this because we understand the value of being accessible, but it also, helps us stay passionate and helps us stay engaged with our community, which is so important, in just the ethos of what SVS is all about.
Yeah. And I can relate. That's why I have my listeners on the podcast. It's like there are people, this is such a niche hobby that people just want to talk about it. And when you and I talked a while ago and you announced the video chat that you had, I'm like, be careful, you'll never get off the phone with these. I mean, because I'm that person. I'm like, I can call you up and like, hey, what do you think of my room? And it's like people are just dying to talk to people, and your people are so receptive. And I mean, I've spent most of my life in this hobby, and I've been a help desk. I am a help desk to people, and it's so much more fun when the person is receptive and both sides are receptive. It's like, I'm hoping that with you guys, it's you get mostly receptive, like people are excited about their stuff. I get like the in-laws and the relatives that are like, my TV's broke. What's wrong? And you're like, I'm like, turn it off and turn it back, unplug it, plug it back in. That won't work. Yeah, well, try it. A little different. So I'm hoping your people, your customers, your owners, as you call them, are more receptive to all that. Do you find that? Like they're just happy to have a great product?
I've never gotten a comment where the person said, your customer service person didn't care. I've just never gotten that. And they do write to us to tell us what we could do better, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, more often than not, I hear positive. But one of the things I was going to say, to your point, what company doesn't tell you they give great service? This is something Nick and I always talk about. It's like, the cable company tells you they give great service. Why wouldn't they? I mean, has there ever been a company that said, well, once you get through our crappy, I was going to say a bad word. Once you get through our crappy service, everything else is fine. Nobody says that, right?
Right.
Nick is up against two very weird things. Number one, everyone always says they give great service, but Nick has to define it, with more granularity, frankly, because what we do is real. We go deep into it to make sure somebody's happy. And the same thing, the other thing we wrestle with is who makes a speaker and doesn't tell you it sounds great? I mean, I got a speaker this big in front of me now, and if I have to go look at the description, but I guarantee you the manufacturer said this speaker sounds great. You got to go a little deeper into what it really means to sound great, right?
Yes, absolutely. And it's one thing when a person or a company touts their own widget, right? But you guys, or anybody, it's not that. It's the customer reviews. And your customer reviews, people hear about you in other podcasts, AV Rant. I've heard about you guys for years in podcasts, AV Rant, HD guys, all these, but they talk about the customer service all the time. And this is all unprovoked stuff, right? It's just like, oh, I need a subwoofer, or I need a great speaker. I need an elevated speaker. What do I need? Go here, talk to these people. Any problems and we do it from our own. And like I started doing it because I had my own experience. And that's what I talked about long before I met you guys. I had my own experience with you, and that got me to want to meet you guys. So it's one thing for you guys to say it, but it's another thing when everybody else is saying it. And that's what I think is the most important part, is the customer's perspective. And obviously you guys are hitting it on that.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I think the approach for a lot of brands is, triage, stop the bleeding. We're all about, call us before you even thought about what you're going to purchase, and we'll help you create some sort of guidelines or understand what might be the best product for you. And then at the same token, once you've got it, call us after the fact. You don't think you're getting quite the performance you expected, we'll walk you through every possible optimization. And I think that end-to-end level of service is where we really stand out. But it's something we got to work hard to communicate, and certainly having third parties ring that bell is definitely helping the cause.
Yeah. So Gary, I know you have a hard out, so you've got to get going. I got what I want. I got the Audiophile information I needed. I had a great time. Nick and I are going to stick around and talk some home theater. Is there anything else you wanted to? Because Nick has got quite an SVS product.
This hour has flown by. I've really had fun. I hope there's a value to your viewers, because this was really a lot of fun for me. I think felt like Nick was having a good time too, and hopefully it's worked out.
Yeah, I want to have you back, Gary, but just you. I'm really gonna.
No.
I want
Nick is more fun.
No way. No, you and I would have a good time. I feel like you two are sitting there and you're like, not competing, but you don't want to step on each other. If I can get each of you alone, or get Gary alone, we can get into home theater. We can get into
complain about Nick if he's not on.
I'll
totally throw him under the bus.
There we go.
I promise.
That's why we got to do it.
5 minutes after I'm done, it's like, all right, we were on our B game there. We need to get the A game going again.
Actually, Nick has been. He's always been willing to tell me where I can do better. We do a lot of this kind of thing together, and he's a great partner. So he'll carry the flag well when I go off. And I guarantee you the Zoom I'm going to right now isn't going to be nearly as much fun as this has been. So thanks for having me on.
Gary, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I can't wait for next time, buddy.
Okay, me too.
Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
Bye. Thanks, DJ.
Bye. All right, it's just us now. I miss Gary already. You told me a while ago you were working on something. Here we go, buddy. You got your own home theater. Talk about it, because you were a little embarrassed you didn't have one, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you aspired to one. And I told you, it's not about the theater, it's the man in the box. Tell me about your box. That sounds weird.
Well, I will say I did have sort of a Frankenstein system about 4 or 5 years ago in my basement, which was, a couple different brands of speakers, SVS included, sort of mismatched together. My rear surround speakers were like almost overhead, and it just was not optimal in any sense of home theater setup. And so I embarked upon this project, and obviously, you have to have your significant other embracing it as well. So where I'm sitting right now is a dedicated room that now functions as my office and a home theater. Above what's now our garage, and then adjacent to this is a mud room. So those are the sort of things that were able to make this whole project get off the ground. Was one, I work from home full time. Two, my wife desperately wanted a mud room to put all of our shoes and jackets and all the stuff that was accumulating by the front door. And then obviously being in New England, the winters can get a little rough down here. So having that garage was a huge benefit for her car having to commute and everything like that. So I pretty much had carte blanche to do whatever I wanted up here, which I cannot tell you how excited that made me. And, to be able to start it from the studs and to get the wiring put into the wall and to get everything placed the place that you wanted it. I mean, not very many people get to have that sort of leeway when they're building a home theater. So, I was sort of in the mindset that, I wanted to go all out. But in the typical, sort of mantra of home theater and audiophiles, I don't think it's quite the end game. I think there's still some places where, I could catch some upgrade-itis. But as it stands right now, I'm just super happy with it. And I've just never had this kind of acoustic, system, just the way that it just brings all the bass and the height effects and everything together. I've never had that in my own home, or frankly, never heard it in any of my friends' homes too. So there's a little bit of that, keeping up with the Joneses and having fun there. But I can walk you through it, but I don't know if you had specific questions you wanted to address first.
Well, no, just you had a goal in mind, and you told me a little while ago that one of your goals was you didn't want to come out swinging. You didn't want to come out with a home run right away. You were like, I want to experience home theater the way it should be, and I want to build my system. And like you said, you want to get some of that like upgrade-itis or whatever, and be like, I want to get. So I'm interested to hear on what you could have done but didn't do, and what you have now. And like you said, it's like I do this all the time with people. Like when you first start out in this, doing this and getting a full home theater system, don't go for it because you won't know what you're experiencing. And it's like, just start and get something going. So you had a Frankenstein system. What could you have possibly done that you that you didn't do, but are excited to see here later?
So I'll start with the brains of the operation. I have a Denon X4500 AV receiver, and it's a fine receiver. It has plenty of power for the speakers that I'm running from it, but I could have gone a little beefier, I think. And in time, maybe I will. I'm doing a 5.2.2 system. So for people who don't know what that means, it's your traditional 5 channels of surround sound, your 2 fronts in the center that you can kind of see over there. You get your 2 rear speakers over here. And then, so that's the 5.1 or the 5.0. And then you can't see the subwoofers, but there's one over in that corner and then one a little bit closer to me here. So that's the first 0.2. And then the second 0.2 would be those prime elevation speakers that you see right overhead. So that is providing the Dolby Atmos height effects. I had thought about doing 2 layers of height effects, but because this room is aligned in sort of the long rectangular way, instead of doing it in sort of, and this is something Ed Mullen, our director of technology, is like, oh, you got to set it up so it's more of a stadium, or like more of a theater where, your seating area is, looking at it the long way. And I was like, I got all these windows and I wanted lots of natural light because it's also my office. So that's not going to work. So I went with this sort of shorter throw home theater, and I got the sectional couch there. So
Yep.
it's as much built for comfort and family viewing as it is for, complete immersion. But I think in time, I always like the idea of some of those like D-box chairs or like
Oh.
those what do they call it? The transducers, the butt kickers,
Yep.
whatever.
Yep.
I mean, they've always seemed sort of gimmicky to me, but then at the same token, I'm like, well, how do I really know? I've seen them at trade shows and all of that. So I think there might be an upgrade path down there. Certainly working for SVS, I got a great deal on these speakers, but there might be some latest and greatest stuff coming out where get a little bit more dynamic output, get a little bit more low frequency extension. So I could see myself swapping out some speakers here and there. And I know this is a brand that you talk a lot about, and this is Endgame, but Kaleidoscape. I mean, what is cooler than Kaleidoscape in the sense of getting first run movies at your fingertips? But you got to shell out for that quite a bit. And I am. I was on some extent on a budget because we built this thing from scratch. So, speaker deal excluded everything else I paid for. So I think all of that was, part of what my thought process was. But I will say one thing I did not skimp on was my AV furniture. You can kind of see it over there. I went with what's called a BDI corridor. BDI is sort of known for their AV furniture. They, has great ventilation, has tons of storage. It has sort of like the nice, like slow close thing.
Oh, nice.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to a friend's house and seen like a crappy IKEA piece that's like bowing underneath the
Oh,
weight of
no.
the
Yep.
TV.
The Boeing.
And I'm like that, it could create resonances. You got like the fiberboard falling apart. So I chose BDI because I knew I wanted a cabinet that would last forever. It's built like a tank, but it's also primed for AV equipment. It's got, tons of storage, like I said, but it's also got lots of like sliding doors on the back so you can run your wires in and out of there. And it's got a anti-scratch top surface. So there's just a lot of cool features that go with the AV furniture where I didn't think I was really going to, bother. But then as I did my research, I'm like, you know what, this is something I don't want to have to replace. I don't want to have to buy new furniture down the road. So that's what ultimately led to that decision.
That's cool. That's something that I haven't really gotten into on this podcast is the furniture. It's like, that is pretty cool.
I know it's sort of, I guess it could be considered some of the most boring aspects of it because it doesn't really speak to the experience. But when you're talking about setup and when you're talking about, just the ease of it, like there's a lot that goes into it, not having to like drill holes in the fiberboard in the back or worry about stuff overheating. And, that matters.
It's also, as an artist, as somebody, I just did a drawing recently, and there's something to framing it too. That's why we like our theater racks. That's why we want to put our components in the right kind of a theater rack and stuff, right? Because you can take a nice drawing and you just look at it in the sketch pad and you're like, oh, that looks great. But then you frame it properly and it just goes pow, right? So you're doing the same thing for your gear with the furniture. And it's like you give you nice theater furniture and you open up that and there's, you're paying a little bit more for it. Yes, there's the convenience of setup, like you said, with the, everything's where it should be. But then, people come in and that's an impressive thing. Hey, pick a movie you want, go into there, do this, do that. And you pop the door and it's like, that is part of the experience. And that's the stuff that we love to like nerd out about too. It's like, I mean, whether it's like your piece of furniture, which goes under the television the long way, or it's a tall theater rack that I had to build my own. But you get those nice tall theater racks that, that are meant for like computers and stuff like that. But it's like, I've always wanted to have it where just the face showed out. And it's like, that's all part of it. And it's like that and what's funny is like you said, it's like you come on here, there's a home theater podcast and you're like, oh, check out, I didn't skimp on my furniture and you felt weird about it, but it's like, we do it all the time. It's like I have people over and I open my equipment closet. I'm like, look, and people are like, what? Like, it's a closet with
look at that knob feel. Appreciate how that knob feels. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever done that? You'd be like, do you feel the clicks in it? You can feel it, but it's like, and if you turn it faster, it goes this way. You're like, oh, it's like, oh God. But yeah, that's all part of it. It's all part of the experience.
Yeah, and I think there was one other area too that I didn't think I was going to go into, but I got a pretty decent power conditioner too, and this was more from talking to some industry friends who had lost gear to lightning strikes and other things like that. He's like, you know what? If you're going to put this together, like it's a one-time investment. Some of them are sacrificial. You don't want to get one that's going to get hit with a surge once and then basically be useless. So invest in something decent. So I got a UPC that's pretty good, and it fits nicely under there, so you can't even see it. And then, the other thing I wanted to mention about the cabinet, the thing that got also excited me, I can't believe I'm hyping it this much, is like that sort of slatted front approach. Yeah. It's like, it's so, it works perfectly with the remote. The IR goes right through it, but you can see right through the slats to see what input is on and what the volume. So when you're sitting at like eye level, like it looks like all nice and lifestyle, but you can still see different settings on the AV receiver. And I'm like, like that's just convenient. So it's these little things, and then obviously the sound is just like so much better than ever before. We do a little treat calendar for the holidays with my son, and so I put a coupon in there for ice cream sundaes and movie night up in the theater. So we watched the new Pinocchio, and oh my goodness, it was just such a enjoyable treat. And it wasn't like one of those over the top like Dune or Top Gun, but like just the ambient effects. Like there was a couple times where I caught him looking over his shoulder, looking up above his head, during a rainstorm and stuff like that. And it's like that was never happening out of my old theater. So I think it's those ability to kind of connect with the content on a little bit deeper level, but then also get the family into it. And I'm going to CES next week in Vegas, and I'm leaving my 18-year-old son home alone, and I've given him privileges to have some friends over here. So I'm just hoping it stays in the same state that it is now when I return home, because I know he likes to listen to some of his music pretty loud, and his friends can get a little bit rowdy. So I'm hoping everything stays in mint shape in the next week.
Take pictures before you go.
Yeah, for the insurance companies. I know.
Oh God. That's Nick, that's awesome. I mean, I've talked about a lot of things on this podcast, a lot of home theater scenes, a lot of speakers, a lot of displays. I don't think we've gotten into furniture. Thank you. Because it's fantastic. I love that idea. And you're right. And I love how you come in with it and you're like, this is going to be weird, but I want to, no, that's not weird. It's why haven't we touched on it before? Probably because you haven't been on to talk about it.
Well, I know some folks from BDI and Salamander and a couple of the other companies. So if you're ever looking to have them on as a guest, then I'm sure they'd be more than happy to pitch their wares for you. But it is one of those, lesser thought about things, because I think in the grand scheme, it's like, well, I can just skimp on the cabinet and just get, like I said, something from IKEA or whatever, the department store nearby, and no one's going to be the wiser. But when you talk about functionality, when you talk about operating performance, those are things to consider if you're doing the end game thing.
Oh, absolutely. I want to geek out on Nick's mind. What, have you always been this way? Or did you go to school? You are so good at like Brightside at all of this, but it's like you're VP of marketing but you're just so good at talking about this stuff. Have you always been this way?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've been blessed to be in this industry for such a long time that I've, my passion for it has grown. I started it in college. My roommate was one of those dudes who bought the big PA speakers out of the white van. I don't know if you knew this. I went to BU.
We talked about it on this podcast. A bunch of people. I don't think you and I did, but
I think so.
Johnny Speakers, and his name is called Johnny Speakers on Twitter. So we talked about this a while ago, and he listened to the pod. He was just a listener at a time. Now he's been on a few times. He had a white van, and his name's Johnny Speakers. But we all know that story, and it's luckily none of us got kidnapped.
Seriously. No, I think my roommate bought him out of the parking lot of like a Star Market or something like that. And he was like, oh, I got a great deal on these. I'm like, well, how do you know they even work? He's like, oh, the guy hooked him up in his van. I'm like, okay. So from that point, I sort of understood that there was, better fidelity out there. I told my story of the little turntable with the stethoscope. But then when I got to do, a PR agency work, I started working for like the highest echelon brands there were, like Krell, which makes, $200,000 monoblock amps, and Runco, which makes $400,000, theater quality CinemaScope projectors and whatnot. And so I got to see sort of the extreme luxury side of it. And, you get these experiences, And then you come across a brand like SVS, who I was lucky to represent when I was the agency. I'm like, they are bringing you 95% of the way there at, a fraction of the cost. And then I also got to see the customer service side. And I also got to see the consumer policies and sort of the passion that Gary brought to it. And that's where I think my sort of personal investment in this got so much greater, and where I became a little bit more vocal and able to articulate, I think, the beauty and the joy that this really brings. And I think that's sort of what led me on the road now. But I also understand the challenges and the frustrations that people have, with this. And I think there's a solidarity in that when you can talk to people about sort of like, wow, perfect example. My electrician wired this HDMI portal where basically it was supposed to be just a drop so I could hide my HDMI going out of the TV into the AV receiver. But darn it, if that insulation or whatever the heck is behind the wall, I'm like shoving hangers behind there. I'm like ripping out the conduit. I'm like, what is going on here? So I still have one little cable dangling from the TV. This is my greatest challenge of my home theater now. But I have fun talking about this stuff, because it's not just like blowing smoke. It's like, we all share these experiences. For the most part, this install was pretty seamless, but I did have a faulty stud finder, so I have some extra holes in my ceiling that don't need to be there. But again, like this is just part of the game, and I think if anyone's telling you like, oh yeah, everything went perfect, they're lying, because frankly, like there's a lot of trial and error with this, and as soon as you think you know everything, some other hurdle gets thrown your way, like HDMI CEC or whatever it is, and that just leads to this sort of education that we all get along the way. And that's fun for me. And I love talking about it.
Yeah, it is. That's one of the fun things about home theater for me, is that it's an everyday like puzzle, right? We're always troubleshooting. When you think you have it perfect, or you think you know everything, you just want to improve it. And with improvements come complications, and with complications come problems. And it's like, and now I got a new puzzle to solve. And it's like I was saying about my issue with the sound base. I'm like, yeah, I could troubleshoot this and I could work my way through, but it'll take a while and it'll do this. And it's like, it's just easier to call up on this stuff. I mean, but that's the fun of it. And to have enthusiastic people on both ends, to be enthusiastic like yourself. And I mean, getting into the furniture, and it's like you said, the positivity. You have a dangling wire there that you don't want to see. And we're like, that's fun because you're going to solve it. Right? You're like, it's right. Ultimately, it gets solved. But then once it's solved, I already can see you sitting there in your house. People come over. Hey, see, there's no wires. You're like, you want people to notice.
A little story about that. It was actually the biggest thing I had to overcome to get that one wire behind the wall. But it's definitely a learning experience, and I think there's a mindset, when people are fixing things, to like get really frustrated or get like really upset. And, I tried to approach this from a perspective of, learning experience here. Let's not get mad. Let's just get out your MacGyver hat and figure out what needs to be done. And it was great because I had my older son, helping me along the way with some of the unboxings and stuff like that. And so, I kind of got to impart and feel smart in front of him, some of the knowledge that I've accrued, which isn't always the case with an 18-year-old. They know everything. So, with this, and then to actually be able to put on, Stranger Things or the Batman and be like, now this is why we went through all of that. And, we watched a Violent Night the other night, and oh my gosh, I haven't laughed that hard at a movie in so long. It was just like, I couldn't, I didn't know what I was getting into with it, but just to sit there with my older son and just laugh our asses off at a holiday movie, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. It is pretty funny. And it is, I was going to watch it with my wife. My son wasn't around. I ended up watching it myself. And I said to her afterwards, I go, yeah, glad you didn't watch it. I'm like, it is truly like, if anybody comes out of that, and I likened it to Dumb and Dumber. When that came out, everybody's like, that movie was so dumb. Well, it's in the title. Well, Violent Night is like hyper violent. I mean, it is gross. It is, there's some graphic killings and maimings and whatever. It is super violent, but it's a holiday movie.
Yeah, but then they have like this sort of, soft holiday music playing in the background during these melees of carnage. And it's just like, it makes it not so bad. So, we had fun with that one. Not for the whole family, but, that's why you have Christmas Story and National Lampoon. So
there you go.
That's the better ones for the crew.
Yeah. Nick, this has been a blast. I truly, yeah, I do definitely want to get you back. We'll talk some scenes, just you. We'll talk some scenes and about your theater. Maybe you and I will do a couple of movies and we'll break them down together. I'll watch it, and actually, you know what? Maybe I'll come down and visit.
I would
You're
love
not
that.
far.
You're an hour stone's throw away, so it's an open
Yeah.
invite, and we got a CES next week in Vegas, but
Yeah.
after that I'll be home for a while, and let's make this happen.
Maybe I'll check
Once I
in
get
on
that
your
wire
son.
hidden, though, I got to get that wire
Yeah,
hidden.
yeah.
Chef's kiss, maybe some spackle in those holes next to the elevation.
That's
but
what I mean. That's
other
why
than
they
that,
make spackle white.
That's right. We're about as close as we can get here to the
Hey.
Final product.
It's called character. That's all.
Yeah,
It's just called character. That's
It
all.
helps me work on my handyman skills too.
There you go. So, thank you very much. Thank you for everything, for all the support. All the support since I've met you guys, and I mean, you obviously the company, you got great company, great support out of that company. So I shouldn't expect anything less. But 2022, you guys, I really got to know you. I actually met you in 2021, I believe, in the fall, but just this past year, you guys have been awesome. And when I reached out to you over the summer about, supporting charity events and charity stuff, you were just like, oh, yeah. I mean, you just jumped right on it. I still remember you calling me back right away, and I was out in my backyard, and I'm like, hey, what? Okay, yeah, let's do it. And you're like, no, we need to do this. So thank you very much for that. That was awesome, because when a company like yourself and a guy like yourself, I'm literally sitting in my basement. There's a fake curtains behind me and posters. I'm just a donkey that likes home theater. And to have guys like you be like so responsive, it's been encouraging to me and humbling. So thank you guys. Thank you for that personally.
Well, you're my favorite donkey for what it's worth, and appreciate everything you're doing for this community, and obviously, sharing the good word about the WPA. It's obviously close to Gary's heart and to SVS. So anytime we can be on, we're more than happy to talk movies, music, whatever. Just drop a line and we'll be free. And like I said, open invite here to Rhode Island, and we can get out and do a little tour.
Sounds good, Nick. Hey, and after all this, tell Larry I said hi.
Absolutely.
Appreciate
Larry's
it.
dying to get on as well. So he's got his clips from 2022 ready to go.
Oh, here we go. Oh, we're booking it. Can't wait. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching in. And go push play. Hey, Fred. This has been a Hey Fred production with theme music by Jeff Bernhardt and Throne Vault Productions.